Hey guys, I'm Janet on occasion, and today we're playing the Total War Warhammer II Battle Replay. Oh wow, they're coming right for me. It's okay, they're disappearing. So, okay, this is another one from Shadow's tournament, and it's an interesting one. This is Hazard playing the Wood Elves, and he's up against WickD, who's playing as the Dark Elves. So, yeah, it's an elf-off, I suppose. So this is very interesting, because this map, usually, you get people lined up here, and here. Occasionally people are a bit sneaky and sort of go off in this corner to be like, haha, I have the high ground. And it's a bit silly. But no, yeah, this is completely ridiculous. People are basically, rather than fighting across this line, are fighting across this line, which I think is very interesting indeed. So here you can see a couple of Glade Riders, one with Hagbane Tip, so the poison will certainly help out, and it'll slow things down, which is nice because units want to get into position over here. You see more with Hagbane Tips, more without. There's some Wild Riders as well. Swift Shiver Shards here, going to be very good against things like Witch Elves, going to be able to kill them very quickly. That physical resist will not help them against the Swift Shiver Shards magic damage. Also over here you can see it's actually an Ancient Treeman, which I think is really interesting, because it is a bit of a habit nowadays just to bring Fireball on a Sorceress and just snipe out Lords and Spellcasters all day. But although Fireball will do a bit more damage to something like a Treeman that is weak to fire, it doesn't have a lot of armor piercing, so it actually does less than if you were, say, to use it against a Spell Singer. So this is actually a great idea, just have a load of healing on something that's very difficult to kill. You know, very defensive posture here. Also, there's a load of Eternal Guard, including the Winterheart Guards, which of course are unbreakable, and more in the back as well, and there are a couple of War Dancers, so very good anti-infantry. They'll be able to cut through a heck of a lot. But, I mean, that's pretty much it. That's it. I mean, I guess that's quite a lot of an army, but still, nothing crazy fancy, not a load of Way Watchers hidden somewhere or anything. No, it's just a lot of ranged stuff and a load of cheap things to block things in, plenty of healing. So kind of cool. So his opponent here, so this is WickD's army. He's got some Bleak Swords, Silver Shields, very, very handy in this matchup. So he's got a couple of them. Well, I say a couple, he's got 5. And then further back, you can see he's got the Sister Singing Doom. That Terror is pretty damn handy. And of course, that's just great anti-infantry. And things like Wild Riders, stuff like that. If it gets rampaged, they get cut to ribbons very quickly, you know. They are anti-infantry, these guys, but their melee attack at 53 is still huge. So if they can tie something down and rampage it, they can still cut it to pieces, because Wood Elves just don't have the armor, you know. But of course, they will be very susceptible to ranged fire. There is also Cold One Knights in the back, Doomfire Warlocks, more Cold One Knights. He's got a couple of Black Ark Corsairs with handbows that I think are a really good pick. They're really good for just being able to sort of, I mean, they shoot any direction. So again, things like Wild Riders, they can cause real problems. They can be running one way and shoot back at them, you know. They can do a lot of damage there. They don't need a huge amount of armor piercing, but you'd be amazed how much armor piercing they can do. It really adds up just from the amount of missiles they fire. Also, Supreme Sorceress of Fire. Just on a horse though, not in the air. Didn't want to compete in the air because of course, Prey of Adathramer, dangerous. Also over here, Snatches Harvesters. So plenty of cav on this side. But they're not going to have many avenues to get in if this is going to be what's being defended. So it's pretty cool. Also, plenty of ranged units. No ranged units on this side, you see. So they can't sit back and abide by, you know, the attacking rules. They actually have to attack. So that is something to avoid sort of cheesing. But if you don't bring any ranged units, I mean, okay, fine, sort of, you know, with the Corsairs. But if you don't find a load of ranged units, you can't really sit back and camp. You have to go to your enemy, you know, which I think is a good idea. I think it's good. It just means you have to be sort of careful about that, right? Also, there are some Dark Riders positioned way in the back. And, well, there's some more hidden somewhere. Maybe? Maybe not. No, maybe just the one unit, never mind. So here you can see the Bleak Swords are taking some damage. These ones almost actually routing, just from the arrow fire here. And it's not a terrible idea, because once you get rid of all these guys, just things like the Eternal Guard, they'll be able to hold against any cavalry really nicely. You know, the Bleak Swords are going to be quite good against the cavalry. Of course, Bleak Swords will suffer against things like the War Dancers, but you don't want to throw the War Dancers into the fight unless you need to. So it is nice just to whittle down these Bleak Swords, even with their Silver Shields, and it forces them to come in, you know. So over here you can see Dark Riders are actually trying to go in between to cut these guys off, which is not a bad idea, but the Deepwood Scouts are here now, and the Wild Riders are coming out of the woods, so this is pretty great. So yeah, coming out of the woodwork, one might say. So Swift Shiver Shards doing a lot of damage to these Dark Riders, they're being shot at by the Glade Riders too, and they just get chased off. I mean, they can't commit now, they have to get out of there, or they're just going to be wasted in this engagement. You can see the Glade Riders have taken a bit of damage though. So, yep, they're off. And here you can see the Cold One Knights are actually taking a little bit of damage too. They are losing the odd model. And what is beautiful about this is they can rampage. So if you can get enough damage on them early, they're going to rampage and charge in before sort of a decent, organised offensive can be, well, organised, basically. So very, very well played by Hazard here, really using the terrain to his advantage and keeping within the rules, you know, keeping within the rules. But I think this is fair play. He had to do a lot of, you know, he had to make sure his army was perfect to be able to delay things, to be able to set up these positions. So it takes effort, it takes effort. So here you can see Dark Riders obviously just getting completely slaughtered. Fireball coming in here, probably for the Ancient Treeman, I imagine. Yep. So it does a bit of damage, but nothing major. Nothing in Earthblood isn't going to help, you know? Isn't going to fix. But over here, Cold War Knights are starting to push in, and the Spearmen haven't got here yet. The Spearmen haven't managed to get in, and that is very bad. These Cold War Knights could really push the offensive and do well, but it looks like the Spearmen might just get here in time. But that's going to be after a lot of the Glade Riders have really suffered. You can see the Doomfire Warlocks are pushing in the same. But over here, these Wild Riders have just been tearing it through all of these units, which is pretty impressive. So they got the Scroll of Shielding, but they also had a regrowth when they first charged in here. So they were shrugging off any damage they were doing while causing a nuisance over here. And it's really good to use regrowth as a defensive thing. If you know they're about to take a ton of damage, because you're kamikazing them through the entire enemy line, then yeah, use a regrowth, just straight away. Just use it straight away, and it means you can get out with barely a scratch on you. I mean, they did take some damage, but there's still 41 models in there, and they just devastated this line, caused a load of problems. It allowed time for more sort of a concerted effort to push back the offensive over here, and these guys weren't able to all push in because they were busy trying to corral the Wild Riders over here. And that's a pain. That's a real pain. So over here you can see the War Dancers are charging in, but the War Dancers won't do so well against the Doomfire Warlocks getting charged there. But you can see the Eternal Guard are pushing up too. And the Doomfire Warlocks, again, huge physical resistance, but no armor. And yeah, Swift Shiver Shards, they ignore the physical resistance. So the Doomfire Warlocks are really susceptible to damage from them. So you can see there was a Soul Blight. It is going to lower weapon damage. But yeah, just fighting Bleak Swords, those War Dancers should win fairly well. And yeah, the Doomfire Warlocks continuing to take damage. Some more damage on the Corsairs now, starting to whittle them down, knowing that this isn't going anywhere. But the Witch Elves are starting to push through. So the Witch Elves versus War Dancers, quite even, actually. Kind of an even fight there. But the Slash's Harvesters are pushing in, and they got below half health, so very, very quickly. So they only got the one Soul Stealer off before they went below half health and can't cast any more spells, which is kind of crazy. But over here, Earthblood being used, and some other spell was used, I'm sure of it. Okay, I heard a spell effect. So here, it looks like a Doombolt coming in for the Ancient Treeman, and a load of units are starting to push in, and this was a beautiful move. These Cold War Knights managed to sneak around the back, as did some of these Bleak Swords, while the one unit of Eternal Guard was being pinned. So a load of units in the back line now. These Cold War Knights are going to rip through a lot of this stuff. But, you know, still these Glade Riders being used as basically just to stop things from running in, just to let the infantry do their work. Sadly, though, I think the War Dancers did get pretty knackered here. Yep, they got wiped out eventually. But they did a lot of damage to those Witch Elves, and there were a lot of cavalry pushing through as well. So over here, you can see, yep, Rampage, Cold War Knights are Rampage, Wild Riders working overtime to try and stem this flow, and you see the floodgates have opened. All the Dark Elves are within here. Loads of stuff is getting rampaged by the Witch Elves, and like I said, although they are anti-infantry, against lightly armed cavalry, they can still just chop them to pieces, and especially ranged cav, you know, that you don't want to be in this fight, they're just going to get stuck in it, which is a real problem. You know, they want to be able to run away, but nope, they're going to get stuck in melee. All this stuff is rampaging. See, the Supreme Sorceress has charged right in. She's just on a horse, which she'll do. She'll do. So here you can see the Eternal Guard still holding back these Black Ark Corsairs, which is very impressive to be able to hold that stuff back. But look at that. Wild Riders have been terrified. That is definitely not good. And that's the Sister Seeing Doom causing that, and they're still very healthy. They can still get a lot of killing done in here. But some units are starting to run away. Some... I mean, look at this. Deepwood Scouts. Now Rampage. That's going to be charging into melee. But there is one unit still back here. And now the War Dancers and Eternal Guard are starting to close in. So you see there is a sandwich happening. So a ton of these units are just getting sandwiched, and they're getting broken very quickly, and when they're in the middle of a huge group like this, it doesn't matter which direction they run in, they're going to take a ton of extra damage on the retreat, because they have to retreat through other enemies. So suddenly, that Dark Elf offensive that seemed absolutely spot on, it's basically just left the Supreme Sorceress over here stranded, because, yeah, Sister Seeing Doom are now running for their life too, and that Ancient Treeman, he's still having a laugh. Yeah, nothing's bothering him right now. And Supreme Sorceress in a lot of trouble. A lot of archer fire coming in. Some, you know, some of the trees helping. But you can see the Glade Riders running in again. It's a lot of very cheap stuff, but I mean, the Supreme Sorceress, not a great not a great combatant on the horse. 30 melee defense is not a lot, so you can actually capitalize with a decent charge bonus of the Glade Riders. So over here, units are starting to push out. Wild Riders suffering a lot of damage, but they're over 100 kills now. And they are keeping this stuff busy, and it slips into army losses. Pyrrhic victory. So I thought that was wonderful. I thought that was really interesting to see. It's, yeah, pretty rare to see that. I think one thing that Dark Elves almost always need. Obviously this is a very offensive army, you know, with all the sort of speedy things like the Doomfire Warlocks, you know, the Cold One Knights, the Dark Riders. A lot of very quick, mobile forces there. But I think a couple of bolt throwers, honestly. I think a couple of bolt throwers. Every time I see bolt throwers brought against the Wood Elves, they seem to do really well. Because they can react to anywhere on the map, pretty much. You know, as long as they're in range of most stuff, which they will be, as soon as something comes out of stalk, you know, it'd be Way Watchers, you can just start shooting them. Which is nice. You can get damage on things that you otherwise can't catch out very easily. So it's very good. You can start whittling down those expensive targets. But if it's something like the Ancient Treeman, yeah, just have the bolt throwers fire at him. And it forces them to have to come to you, which can be very, very beneficial. Especially when you can screen with a ton of bleak swords. So sure, you know, as you push the bleak swords out to try and make a sort of a barrier, you know, at a safe distance around you, so they can intercept anything that might be going for the bolt throwers, they're going to get picked off, of course, you know, by Wild Riders things. They're going to try and get those surrounds on them. But then that's when you get your bolt throwers just to aim for that, you know. There's always going to be a cost to trying to sort of push in, which is really good. If they do slip between all the bleak swords, pull the bleak swords back and everything gets stuck in the middle. And, yeah, gobbled up by things like Cold One Knights. So there is potential. There is potential. Excuse me. So, yeah, I think this is a good army, but I don't know. Every time I see this matchup, I feel like bolt throwers always pay for themselves. And, yeah, it forces them to come to you. You know, he would have been able to sit back and avoid that horrible engagement. And I think that would have been very, very useful indeed. But beautifully played by, I know, the Dark Elves, they did get a bit stomped. Sorry, Wicked. You know, that was a terrible position to have to throw yourself into. But you got some really good offensives going there. You know, the fact that he actually managed to get the cavalry in round the back, he managed to find those entrances into that sort of bastion there with the cliffs, I think was very well played. But it was just too much, you know. You still had to funnel yourself into some pretty terrible positions. So really well played by Hazard for forcing that to happen. I think it was very impressive. So guys, if you enjoyed this, please do comment, like, and subscribe, and go check out Shadow Online Gaming's channel, because he is showing every single game from his tournament on his channel. So definitely worth watching. There's some great competitors in it. And I'm not in it this time, though. I know, sad. But yeah, some great players. Go check it out. So that's me done for today. So I suppose, have a good one, guys.